Welcome to Business Plan Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. My name is Lorraine Ball, and I am going to be your presenter today. I run a marketing company. We work with small businesses. We work with lots of startup companies, as well as more mature organizations. And all of them need to have a business plan. Over the years, as we've worked with a number of companies, we've identified some common mistakes that companies make as they approach business planning. Today's conversation is focusing on those mistakes and what you can do to avoid them. The first is a lot of companies have no plan. They assume that this is something they can do later, if they need a loan, if they need an investment. They figure they've got good ideas, they know what they're doing. But the truth is that putting it off is really not a good idea, because you will be surprised sometimes when you need that plan. Maybe you're thinking about buying a building and you're going for a loan. Guess what? Then you need a plan. But even if you're going to just rent office space, many times leasing agents want to see a plan. They're not all that willing to have you come into a building if they're not sure you've got a sustainable business. Bankers need plans, investors, but so do your employees. You may know exactly where the business is going, but a business plan helps outline those ideas and create a formalized structure so other people know as well. What should be in your plan? These are the typical sections for a business plan. First, the first thing that you come to is the executive summary, but that's not actually the first thing you write. Actually, if you're doing your business plan correctly, you're going to write all the other sections and then come back to the executive summary. You're going to write about your company history, where did your ideas come from. You're going to talk about what, if any, accomplishments your company already has. If you thought about mission and vision and value statements, this is the place where those things go, as well as profiles of your leadership team. You want to include market research in your plan, and then an outline of your business strategy, kind of the 4 Ps. Product, what is it that you're selling? Place, where are you going to sell? How are you going to distribute those products and get them to your customers? Online, in retail stores. Those are all elements of the place. Pricing. And pricing is not just about, well, we're going to sell it for $5.99 or $6.99. A good pricing strategy will also look at how you want to be positioned. Are you going to be the cheapest or the most expensive? Do you want to have a few great customers or high volume? That's going to affect your pricing strategy. And finally, under business strategy is promotion. How and where are you going to advertise and promote your business? Operations deals with more the logistics and nitty-gritty of the business. Where could you get your parts and supplies? What are your operating manuals, hours of operation? How are you going to hire and train people? All of that falls under the operations category. And finally, forecast and financials. How much money is this business going to make, and what does your financial position look like now, and what's it going to look like later? And the appendix of your business plan usually contains everything else that you think should sort of be in there, but you don't really know where else to put it. So these sections can be very robust or simple highlights, but this is the kind of information that needs to be in your plan. The second mistake people make when they start writing their plan is they have no clear audience for the plan. And the challenge with that is that different audiences are going to need different information. You know, if you're just writing a plan for your own direction as a company, you can keep it fairly simple. You can focus on the more action-oriented sections of the business. You may be able to get away with just a few pages. If you're going to a banker, if you're looking for a loan, they're going to turn to the back first. They're going to look at the numbers, and if the numbers don't add up, you're not going to have a conversation. Interestingly, however, investors are different. They really want to focus on your idea and the people who are going to take the idea to market. And so as you're writing your plan, you may actually end up writing several plans. You have one large master document, and you kind of pull the things that you need as you're presenting your ideas to different groups of people. The next mistake that I think a lot of businesses make as they're starting out and as they're starting to work on their plan is having a poorly defined customer. I always hear, well, everybody needs my product. Yeah, no. It does not matter what you sell. Not everyone is going to buy your product. Let me give you one of my favorite examples when I say that everyone is not your customer. Soap. This is a pretty basic item. Everybody needs soap, but the ivory customer is not going to buy oil of Olay, and the lava customer is not going to buy ivory. These products are different, and if they spend a lot of time trying to expand their market, they're going to spend a lot of time trying to talk to people who don't really care about them. And so this particular exercise I do whenever I teach marketing at a college is I give students these bars of soap and I ask them to tell me about the customers. And you should do this same exercise for your business. Think about different groups of people who might or might not use your product. For example, when I look at ivory soap, I look at age. It's targeted at younger women, typically moms. Why? Because the product is sold on purity and they are buying it primarily for their babies. When I think about their lifestyle, when I think about the things that these people do, they're spending lots of time with their family. And so if I'm looking to construct a marketing message or a distribution plan, I have to keep that in mind. I might consider giving away samples in new baby kits. I might join groups on Facebook and talk about the pure benefits of ivory soap. Understanding who that customer is helps me figure out where I need to promote, what the packaging needs to be like, because I understand my customer. Conversely, oil of Olay is targeted at a slightly older customer. Still women, but a little bit more affluent, because this soap is more expensive than your basic ivory. But she's okay with that because she's buying it for the moisturizing. This soap is youth in a bottle. And where does she spend her weekends? What kind of things does she do? She might be going to lunch with friends. She might be shopping. This is someone that I might reach in Oprah Magazine or on WeTV. I might join more, I might promote it to more book clubs or higher end country club type of environments or in their magazines. Understanding, again, who your customer is. Now let's flip over and let's look at the guys who buy lava soap. The blue collar and blue collar hobbyists. And the funny thing is, if you look at the packaging on lava soap, it's the official soap of NASCAR. So where are you going to promote this product? Well, they've already figured it out. This is soap, but you can do this same exercise for any product or service. And when you do this, it gets easier to construct the rest of your plan. If you don't do this, there's no way to really do the rest of the plan very well. You can do it if you're targeting B2B, if you're selling accounting services or IT services or legal services. Your customers are other businesses, but your organization is going to appeal more to a certain size company, maybe companies in a certain industry or certain geographic areas. When you think about this and you start to get that picture, everything else falls into place. And then build a persona of your customer. Really think about not just that customer as numbers, but as a person. I happen to really love this particular example because in addition to describing age and gender, they really get into some of the motivations or goals and frustrations of the customer, and they actually get quotes of real customers that they include in their persona to really bring it to life. And don't think that this is just for consumers. Again, if you're in a B2B industry, think a little bit about your decision makers. Who are the people in organizations? It's not enough to say, well, we're going to sell to manufacturing companies. Are you going to sell to the HR manager in a manufacturing company? Are you going to sell to a plant supervisor? At the end of the day, it is a person that is going to make that decision. And when you define these elements, it gets easier to figure out which social media platforms you need to be on. What kind of language do you use in your brochures? Again, what kind of terms and pricing is going to make your product more attractive to your customer? Next mistake is details. We see people putting too much information or the wrong type of details. Whenever I get to this mistake, I always think about an old story about an impatient young man who went to visit a Bible scholar. He demanded that the old man tell him everything he needed to know about the Bible while standing on one foot. The old man smiled, stood on one foot, and said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. All the rest is commentary." Now, why do I include that story in a presentation about business planning? It's not because I think business owners require divine intervention, although maybe sometimes they do. I include the story because it really is a wonderful lesson for business owners. Regardless of what you believe about the origin of the Bible, most people agree it's a fairly complex work with multiple themes and messages contained in its pages. And yet, in a few words, I would argue that the old man captured the essence of the Bible. And the lesson is simple. As you write your business plan, imagine you are writing for an impatient young man and try to meet his challenge. Boil down the descriptions of your business to a simple message, deliverable while standing on one foot. Too often, particularly in the product description, we see owners getting bogged down in the detail, providing way too much information for the reader. So, keep it concise. Create a summary that you can deliver standing on one foot. Describe the problem that you solve, how you solve it, and who will care. When you're talking about the problem you solve, you're really talking about who your target customer is. How you solve it is the product and the features, and who will care. Well, that's when market research comes in, where you really begin to demonstrate that you've actually found a target audience for your product. And while we're on the subject of market research, this is a huge mistake. I can't tell you how many people call me, they've got a business idea, they want us to help them, and they really haven't done their homework. They really haven't asked the question if anyone wants to buy their product. And by anyone, I mean anyone other than their mom, spouse, or best friend. Too often, we see innovative entrepreneurs becoming enamored with their technology, product, or idea and failing to look at the larger community. They think it's cool, and surely everyone else will as well. And so, as you're starting down this process, as you're writing your business plan, take time to invest in market research. And there's different kinds of research that you can use. And depending on how big the business and how much money you're investing will tell you how much research you need. A good place to start is with secondary research. Going to libraries and universities, the Census Bureau, and online resources to find out how many people out there have the problem that your product is going to solve. How many people fit your demographics? We're working right now with a company that has a fitness app, and they've identified potential users by parts of the country. And so they know that they're going to do much better if they launch this app in certain communities rather than others because they're more potential customers. Secondary research is looking for research studies that other people have conducted that answer questions that you need the answers to. And it's a great place to start. But sometimes you need to do primary research as well. You might need to do focus groups or informal conversations. One thing to keep in mind, if you're going to be doing qualitative research, you want to be sure that you keep in mind that you're really only talking to a small group of people. 10 people in a focus group are just that. They are 10 people in a focus group. They are not a representative sample. It's a good way to get thoughts and impressions, feelings about a product. But if you're trying to come up with a number, what percentage of people surveyed are likely to buy your product or service, you're going to need to do a survey or a poll, and you're going to need to reach a much larger sample of people. Research helps you determine a preliminary level of interest in your product and a potential customer's willingness to pay. Ask, and ask again before you spend the money to be sure that there really is a market for your product. And then be realistic, because you are not the only game in town. Everyone has competitors. Even unique and innovative products have to deal with competing products or services that may or may not solve the same problem the same way, but will compete for a customer's available resources. So, for example, primary competitors is someone or some other company that solves the problem the same way you do. In my business, when I'm working with a business owner who wants to grow, they may hire me to design their website, or they may hire someone else. That someone else is a primary competitor. They build websites just like I do. But maybe that business owner decides that instead of a website, what they're going to do is invest in television advertising. That TV station or newspaper or radio is a secondary competitor for me. They're solving the same problem. The business owner wants to grow, and they are giving them a different solution. And then there are tertiary competitors. And in this instance, what you're competing for are the resources. When I'm working with a small business owner, they have to invest money in growth, but maybe they also have to invest money in computers and office equipment. And in that case, my competitor might actually be Dell.com. If you don't know who your competitors are, there is no way to prove that you have a better solution. For example, let me give you another example of how this really can kind of mess with your marketing, is when I worked for Carrier Heating and Air Conditioning, in the new construction market, what I wanted was for the customer to buy the upgraded heating and air conditioning equipment rather than the basic stuff that came with his home. And I would talk about all the products and features of my upgraded equipment and why we were better than other brands, but I was wasting my time because at that moment, I'd already gotten the sale. We were the brand the contractor was installing. And what I was really competing with was the upgraded carpet and the double pane windows. And so once I understood that and we changed our sales pitch to really talk about how an upgraded heating and air conditioning system would save more money than double pane windows and would make you more comfortable than thicker carpeting, we actually sold more upgrades. If you don't know who you're competing with, really competing with, you're not going to be prepared to win the sales. And for someone who says to me, you know, nobody else is doing this, I get it. You might be the very first person, but then there are two things you have to ask yourself. Why not? Why has no one else ever thought of this? Are you really that smart, or is there really no problem? And then the second question is, nobody is doing this, so people who have this problem, how are they solving it? And when you answer that question, it will help you identify your secondary and tertiary competitors. No meaningful goals or milestones. Goals for your business plan have to be specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-based. It is not enough to say you want to grow sales. You have to define by how much, because the amount of effort you're going to have to put behind your actions to grow by 10% is dramatically different than the amount of energy it will take to grow by 50 or 100. And your goals have to be action-oriented. They have to be things that you can put activities around. And you need to be realistic. It's wonderful to have ambitious goals. But if you've had 5% growth for the last 5 years and you put together a plan to grow by 25%, unless you are going to put significant energy behind that, it's not going to be possible. And because you've never grown at that rate, you may not necessarily be prepared even if it does happen. And the last thing is time-based. Think of a student who knows they have a final exam in May. The amount of energy they're going to put towards studying a little at a time every night between January and May is one approach. Or they can wait until the very last week of April and start cramming. When the deadline is going to change how much energy you're going to have to devote to that goal. And milestones. Once you have your goals in place, once you have your timelines and your deadlines, you need to think about how are you going to measure your progress along the way. I'm going to grow by 20% this year. Well, if you get to November and you look around and go, wow, we've only grown by 5%, it's too late. It's too late to make changes. So break your tasks up into smaller pieces and identify what will happen, when will happen, and who will do it. For example, we're going to launch a new website. Great. When are you going to have the content? When are you going to have the new pictures? When are you going to hire the web company? When are you going to do testing of the concept? And who's going to be responsible? Because those things do not happen by themselves. A milestone chart, a simple spreadsheet that identifies this is the objective, these are the steps, and then who's going to do it and when. Activities not tied to goals. This is, well, this is the classic entrepreneurial problem. For example, the squirrel. We all behave like squirrels every now and then. You're having a conversation and suddenly you're like, oh, what about this? When it comes to being an entrepreneur, the squirrel syndrome is, I'm working on this, I'm working on this, I'm working on this. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Somebody walks into your office or calls you on the phone and offers you a great tool, a great resource. For $25 a month, you can do this or this or this. Before you say yes, stop, look at that activity, and ask yourself, is it going to specifically move me closer to one of my goals, or is it a nice to-do that's going to lead me down another path? Am I a squirrel chasing the next nut? Your goals, once established, really form the basis of other decisions. If your goal is to double your sales in 3 years, your plan should include an explanation of the resources required to support the additional volume. And so when someone comes along with something that you cannot directly connect to increasing sales, it's maybe something that you don't want to do right now. Avoid cluttering your business plan with interesting side notes and activities that really don't move you forward. And at the end of the day, your business is about the financials. So pay attention to the financials and be realistic. If your goal is a certain amount of dollars in sales, break it down and think about how many units do you have to sell, and is it possible? An activity I did with a guy who was thinking of opening a retail store, I had him stand or sit in his car or stand in front of a store in the strip mall where he was planning on locating his business. I had him count the number of cars that came to that strip mall so he could realistically get a sense of the traffic. And then I had him sit down and think about how many units he had to sell every week. And he said, well, 25 units, I can do that. Okay, that is 3 to 4 units a day. Is that possible? Yep. 1 every 2 hours. Yes, I can do that. Okay, now go stand in the parking lot. Are there enough people coming into this shopping center that you're going to have enough customers to sell 4 units a day? When you break it down like that, are your projections reasonable? Or are they numbers that you simply pulled out of your hat to get the balance sheet to look good? Your financial statements should include 3-year revenue projections. So after you figure out your sales, calculate your expenses and look at what your numbers look like today, next year, and 2 years from now. Create a starting balance sheet as well as an ending balance sheet. What will it look like in 3 years? And the last piece is the cash flow projection. One of the things that can absolutely destroy a business is money not being available when you need it. This absolutely destroyed a company I was working for very early on in my career. They sold a very large government contract, and at the end of the contract, they were going to make a lot of money. The problem was that they had to lay out a lot of cash early on, and they didn't really anticipate how long it would take to get the money from the government. Waiting for the government, they had to pay salaries and bills, and that project and the poor cash flow from that project almost destroyed them. The solution was to line up a few smaller quick turn projects that generated cash flow when they needed it to to fill in the blanks. Number 10, most common mistake is not to think carefully about what could go wrong. I know you're excited. This is a new business. It's going to be wonderful. But stuff happens, and you need to be prepared. You want to think about things outside of your control. What happens to your business if the laws change? What happens if a new competitor comes into town, launches a product that is less expensive, easier to use? What happens if the economy just tanks? For those of us that were in business in 2008, I can tell you that a lot of businesses did not make it out of that recession. And what about Mother Nature? I remember a horrible spring windstorm that literally blew out the windows in one of the tall office buildings here in town. They were like gale force winds, and an entire floor was literally wiped out. Well, if you can't work in your office, what happens to your business? Do you have backups of all your computer files? Do you have a way of working remotely? Are you monitoring what's going on in the economy and in the regulatory environment for your business? And how will you react if things change? In addition to external threats, there are internal. What happens if you lose a key employee? What happens if there's a product failure? What will you do? The adequate assessment of your risks is not being negative. It helps you be prepared. As you create a list of the pitfalls and regulatory issues, competitive challenges, and changing marketplace conditions that could adversely affect your business, you can begin to develop action plans, safety measures, and insurance policies to protect you, your lenders, and your investors. When the people who are going to be supporting your business see that you have thought through these issues, they will have more confidence to work with you. Now, I know I said there were 10 critical mistakes, but there is one more. And though it's not directly part of your document, poor communication can have a huge detrimental effect on your business. As you write your plan, involve anyone who's going to be affected by it. Seek advice from people you respect. Talk to employees, family members, business partners, and advisors such as your accountant and lawyer. Ask their opinions and communicate your goals. When I started Roundpeg, I sent a copy of my business plan. Well, I gave a copy of my business plan to 3 people. My husband, because he was going to be directly impacted by my decision to start the company. My brother, because he is the best salesperson I know. And my friend Dick, who I just think is one of the smartest people I have ever met. Each of them reviewed the plan and had very specific suggestions on how to make it better. Over the years, and we've been in business over 16 years now, I've shared my plan with my employees. When they understand what I'm trying to accomplish, it's easier for them to figure out how they can contribute and help the business move forward. So where do you go from here? What's next? Well, what's next is you need to get started. Make a list of all the things that need to go in your business plan. If you're kind of an online person, set up a folder and start dragging and dropping files and information that you find and dump it in the folder. You can organize it later. If you're kind of old school like me, get a 3-ring binder and a set of dividers and start printing and punching pages. Start writing little notes. Start building. If you have questions, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're interested, we offer a free resource on how to build a website in 10 weeks. Simply go to the roundpeg.biz website and you'll find instructions there. Be sure to look for other programs by Roundpeg. Thanks so much for being a part of today's program.